I slammed the barn door shut behind me, the wood splintering under my boot as the thing inside unleashed a screech that clawed at my eardrums. Dust sifted from the rafters like gray snow, and I pressed my back against the rough planks, heart thundering like a war drum. It had been my wife's eyes staring back from that creature's face, blue as cornflowers but twisted and elongated, with slits for pupils glowing faintly in the lantern light. Eliza's eyes, but not her soul. Not anymore. The ranch stretched under the Texas sun, endless acres of brittle grass and mesquite untouched by rain since spring. It was 1861, the world ripping apart with secession talk and Yankee threats, but out here in the hill country, our battle ran deeper, fiercer. The Richmonds had held this land for 3 generations since my grandpappy claimed it after the Alamo. We'd buried secrets deeper than the aquifers, but tonight they clawed free. I clutched the shotgun tighter, its barrel still warm from the warning shot into the hayloft. It hadn't killed the thing, nothing would, not fire or blade, but it had bought me seconds to flee. My footsteps, heavy, deliberate, crunched over the gravel path to the house. The air hung thick with wild sage and a fowler rot like a fresh-dug grave. I glanced back. The barn loomed silent, but I knew better. It waited. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled low in the hearth, shadows dancing like imps on the walls. My brother Caleb sat at the table, whittling pine into something like a doll or talisman, hands steady, eyes flicking to the door as I burst in. He was the cautious one, always 2 years my junior, but twice as thoughtful. "Elias," he said, voice low, "you look like you've seen the devil himself." "Worse," I muttered, bolting the door and propping the shotgun against the wall. My hands trembled as I poured whiskey from the jug, amber sloshing over the tin cup. "It's out." Broke free from the ropes while I checked the feed. "Eliza's, it's wearing her skin, Cal, but it's hungry. Eyes like hers, but the mouth, God, the teeth." Caleb's knife paused mid-cut, wood shavings curling at his feet like pale worms. He didn't flinch or preach like the town parson. He just nodded, setting the carving aside. We'd lost Ma to the curse 5 years back, birthing something scaled and tailed that we drowned in the creek before it cried. Pa followed a year later, ending it with his own bullet after the midwife whispered of that night's horror. Now Eliza, my Eliza, gone just 2 hours after delivering in the back room. The doctor from Austin had ridden out at dawn muttering complications, but we knew. The Richmond bloodline carried it. The curse whispered around campfires from here to the Rio Grande. Every wife, every daughter birthed something inhuman. No rhyme, no reason, just the land's vengeance for some forgotten sin. I drained the cup, the burn steadying my nerves. We can't let it loose. It'll draw the neighbors, the rangers. Witch talk and demons are bad enough with war brewing. This'll get us hanged or worse. Caleb stood, grabbing his coat from the peg. Wiry and built for endurance, he bore a scar across his knuckles from wrestling steers. "Plan?" he asked, loading his revolver with practiced clicks. "Fire," I said, gut twisting. The barn brimmed with dry hay, tinder ready. "Burn it out. Then bury what's left, deep as Pa's grave. And we end this, find the source, whatever it takes." He met my gaze, firelight hollowing his cheeks. "Eliza wouldn't want that. For you." "Eliza's gone," I snapped, sharper than intended. But he was right. Her laugh still echoed, witty and light, slicing through ranch monotony like a cool breeze. We'd married young, defying whispers, believing love could outpace blood. Foolish. Outside, wind rose, rattling shutters. The thing's screech echoed faintly from the barn, a call or a promise. Caleb clapped my shoulder and we stepped into the night, shotguns ready. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent as flames licked the horizon in my mind's eye. But deep down I knew fire wouldn't end it. The curse rooted in the soil in our veins. And tonight it hungered for more. The lantern's flame flickered as I knelt beside the birthing bed, air thick with blood's metallic tang and something fouler, like damp earth unearthed too soon. Eliza's screams had faded to whimpers, her face pale as the sheets twisted in her fists, but the thing in the basin held me frozen. Not a child. It writhed with too many limbs, slick skin glistening, eyes like polished obsidian staring unblinking. I was Elias Richmond, the only doctor in this godforsaken Texas town, and in 30 years I'd delivered dozens of babies, but nothing like this. My hands, steady from frontier wounds, trembled as I reached for a cloth to cover it. Whatever curse gripped our town had claimed my sister-in-law first. "Doc, is it?" Eliza's voice cracked, eyes darting to the basin before squeezing shut. She clutched my arm, nails digging like anchors to my normalcy. I'd married her sister 2 years back, dreaming of life amid cotton fields and cattle drives, but Richmond had soured long before. Whispers of the curse started months ago. Widow Hargrove's stillborn that moved after death. The miller's wife birthing scaled litter that slithered into the creek. I dismissed it as prairie hysteria, war's shadow from eastern fields. But now, gripping the basin, the weight pressed down. I forced calm, wrapping the creature in cloth. It squirmed once, twitched feebly, then stilled. It's gone, Eliza. Rest now. Lies slipped easy in the dark, but my mind raced. 3 wives in 3 weeks, all from the old Richmond line, my line. Back to the founder who bought this land in '34. The town bore our name. Red dirt and scrub oak where the Brazos twisted lazy. But lately the river ran murkier. Fish belly up. I carried the bundle to the yard, night air cooling my sweat-soaked shirt. Stars wheeled indifferent as I dug a shallow grave by the oak. No preacher would bless it. Father Malone fled north after the second incident, muttering demons in the soil. By dawn, word spread like wildfire through saloons and the general store. I washed in the basin, clean water now, horror scrubbed, and entered the kitchen where Eliza stared at empty hands. "We can't stay here," she said, voice hollow. "Not if—" She trailed off, but I knew. Our child due in 5 months, the thought clawing sharper than any scalpel. I nodded, pouring coffee that tasted of ash. "I'll ride to the sheriff. Tom's a good man. He'll listen." Tom Hale, boyhood friend, broad-shouldered lawman since the gold rush. We'd hunted together, shared bottles after rains, but he'd lost his wife to fever last spring. No curse then, just luck. Or so we'd thought. The sheriff's office squatted at town's edge. Weathered adobe with a hitch rail. Tom propped boots on his desk, cleaning his revolver methodically. His sharp eyes under bushy brows flicked up as I entered. "Elias, heard about Eliza, rough night. No pity, just fact, like a busted fence." I shut the creaking door. "Worse than rough, Tom, I saw it. Not human. Third one." He set the gun down slow, leaning forward. "Folks are spooked. Old man Jenkins swears Comanche curse, but I ain't buying. Sickness, poison in the well?" I paced the dusty room, motes dancing in slanted sun. "Maybe, but all Richmond blood, my blood. Eliza's kin too?" Tom's face hardened. Bar fight scar pulling tight. He was cautious, weighing risks like a trader, while I charged with my kit. We dig in, quiet. No street panic, war's riled enough fools. He grabbed his hat. "Start with old records. Your grandpappy's journals, attic. Pattern'll be there." We rode to my house, sun climbing, baking earth to cracked clay. Eliza watched from the porch, hand on belly, as we climbed to the attic. Cobwebs clung like veils, air mildewed with forgotten ink. I hauled down the trunk, leather cracked, and flipped it open. Yellowed letters, land ledgers, and Grandpa Amos's hidebound journal. His tight script from 35, soil-rich but strange lights at night. Women with child dream wolves with men's faces. My stomach twisted. Tom read over my shoulder, breath steady. "Keep going." Deeper, words frenzied. "Lost 3 babes this month." "Not right. Buried them deep, but the ground, it hungers." A crude sketch followed, pencil lines of a form like Eliza's horror. Elongated. I gripped the lantern tighter, its flame flickering like a heartbeat against the damp well walls. Below, water rose unnaturally after last night's storm, lapping stones a foot from the rim. Elias, my brother-in-law, leaned over, face pale under his beard, whispering prayers I couldn't catch. We'd come on a hunch. Old Hargrove's tales tying the well to unspoken births. But with the rope ladder slick in my hands, doubt clawed. Another dead end chasing ghosts while town whispered of my wife's grave. "Lower me, Doc," Elias said, voice steady but Bible-edged. Stubborn, he tied the rope while I nodded, palm sweating in the chill. We'd argued on the ride. Me for dawn, him for now. Signs pointing to this bubbling water after those things. Sarah's screams echoed in my head. The too small, too wrong bundle we buried. No time for weakness. The ladder groaned as Elias descended, boots scraping rungs. I peered down, lantern shadows reaching like fingers. "Anything?" My voice bounced hollow. "Dark as pitch," he grunted. "But the water glows faint like foxfire. Shiver up my spine, not cold. Foxfire in brackish water? Unnatural." I scanned tree line, expecting eyes from scrub oaks. Richmond held secrets drawing trouble. Rival families, Confederate spies, or worse, womb twisters. A splash echoed, sharp. Heart slammed. "Elias." Fine, touched bottom. Shallow, but God almighty. Voice cracked, first real fear. I hauled rope, muscles burning until his dripping head crested, wide-eyed. In hand, a clutched shard, stone veined luminescent, pulsing faint green. Look, he gasped, thrusting it. Not quite stone, smooth as eggshell. Warm, faint shapes swirling inside like veins or limbs. Pulled from silt. Water's full of 'em, Doc, buried deep. I stared, glow turning night sickly. Not just curse, alive. Elias wiped face, water bearding. Tell the others. If poisoning wells, poisoning them. Trailed off, but I knew. Births. Deformities. Sarah's child, skin like this, eyes unopening. Telling risked town blame on the failed doctor. Elias clapped shoulder, grip firm. Burn it first, test, can't bring horror back whole. I nodded, flint itching pocket. Well-gurgled protest below. Wait, not just grief, but unwinnable fight. Dawn hours off, shadows thickening, closing in. The lantern's flame guttered as I pried the trapdoor. Hinges screaming like tormented souls. Below, root cellar reeked of damp earth and sharper, sulfur or dried blood. Elias gripped my shoulder, breath ragged. Sure, Doc. Pa said never after dark. I nodded, gut twisting. Sure, nothing since curse gripped Richmond. 3 wives in 3 months, each birthing things. Not babies. No human cry. Town blamed Comanche hex or Yankee sabotage, but I knew. I'd delivered the last slick mass slithering from Mary Hale's womb. Obsidian eyes gone before blanket. Buried deep like others, but dreams persisted. Now with Susanna's time near, Elias, loyal foreman, confessed Pa's tale. Cellar hid first remains from 32 trading post days. Shovel, I muttered, dropping first. Dirt floor uneven, hard-packed. I struck lantern on beam for steady light. Shadows spectered shelves of withered jars, faded army crates. Elias thudded down, pistol belted, prayed unused. We dug silent, spade yielding too easy, like soil remembered. Sweat stung. Air thickened, fever dream pressing. What if bunk? Elias wiped brow. Pa half mad after ma, after what came. Then stopped before another claimed. Voice steadier than felt. I'd stitched Palo Alto soldiers, wounds preaching faint, but this? Devil's work in our blood. Richardson settled first, built mill and curse. Every wife since, abominations, scales, claws, face voids. Shovel thunked solid after 20 minutes, echoing wrong. Knelt, brushed dirt, splintered wood, child-sized crate coffin. Elias cursed, kneeling. We forced lid, nails popping like bones. Inside, oilcloth yellowed, not bones. Brittle-veined like etched placenta. Malformed limb, long fingers thorn-tipped. Center, fist-sized skull, eyeless accusing. Air chilled, lantern flickering as if breathing. God almighty, Elias whispered, crossing despite no Catholic. Hand-hovered pistol, knuckles white. Gloved I lifted light bundle, hollow. Unfurled, membrane scraps, tail coil. Preserved by dry foul luck. Etched wood beneath. The seed returns. Burn true or claims line, hard hammered. Burn it, like midwives mutter before hanging last spring. Raving then, sense now with Susanna swelling. Town boarding windows eyeing Richmond women leper-like. Mill forge tonight, Elias nodded, pale but set. If fights like stories, fight harder. Rewrapped horror tucked under arm. Climbed out sealed trapdoor. Distant howl, not coyote wind. Older, hungrier. Stars burned cold above Texas as we slipped to mill, arm weight heavier than sins. Susanna's cries soon. End this or child joins tally. The lantern's flame guttered as I slammed the barn door behind us. Wood splintering like brittle bone under boot. Elias gasped, face mud-smeared. Bloodied from the thing outrun. Slimy, elongated, screeching from Richmond Field's shadows. From her, he wheezed, clutching gash-weeping side. Widow Hargrove's belly, curse-taking last night. I nodded, heart war-drumming, though real war miles off in Virginia, this hell Texas soil. Fools to revisit her cabin, chasing midwife rumors of unnatural birth. Now new, curse not barren or stillborns, birthed abominations, life mockeries, hungering living. Grabbed pitchfork, rusted tines sharp for impaling nightmares. Bar door, Elias, pray your wife's not next. He staggered to oak beam, heaving with grunt echoing fear. Voices whispered in head, Richmond women ghosts. Laments wind cracked. Take seed, warps ours no more. Heard since Sarah swelled 3 moons back, but tonight screamed. Elias slumped hay bale, eyes wild. If spread, every county wife, thud rattled door, wet flesh slap. Froze pitchfork raised, sweat stinging forehead cut from chase. Air soured, milk rancid under sun. Quiet, hissed, mind racing. Burned widow at dawn, thinking fire ends. Spawn clawed from ashes, scales oil glistening. Earnest farmers, ranchers, we'd faced droughts, Comanche raids, but this? Devil's bloodline joke. Elias fumbled revolver, Colt clicking dim. Tell others. Marshall Tate, preacher, they gotta know. Voice cracked. Doubt gnawed gut mirror. Tate drunk. Likelier shoot hysteria than hunt monsters. Preacher called God secession wrath. Sermons no womb stopper. Door buckled, crack splitting as claws slate scraped. Lunged, pitchfork through gap into yielding. Wail pierced, half cry, half roar. Resistance yanked balance. Elias fired, gunshot deafening confined. Powder curled specters. Assault ceased, ragged breaths ichor drip. Yanked tool. Black ooze bubbling tines alive. Not dead, muttered, brow wiping. Hurt, can't stay. Thoughts to Sarah, homestead alone, baby kicking fierce. Widow claimed what mercy rest. Came to Richmond for land, kin. Now trap, red earth, future hungry. Elias reloaded, jaw hardening resolve. Ride river, wash evil. Pride beam. Head whispers louder, darker truth, curse not random. Started Richmond name my blood, first horror wife 55. Hid shame. Tonight clawed free, demanding face. Burst moonlit yard, horses snorting alarm. Fields dark endless. Distance cry, not wind coyote, birthed wrong echo. Spurred mount, Elias flank, unspoken sins lead chest pressing. Break this or Sarah's child curse legion, Texas swallowing whole. The lantern's flame guttered in damp cave air. Shadows twisting like buried Richmond things. Gripped pickaxe tighter. Knuckles scarred wood white as Elias whispered behind. Hear that? Breathin'. Voice cracked. Not fear but weight of last chamber's nest. Brittle shells cracked empty. Calico scraps matching old wives' tales. Came far chasing rumors, me and Elias, after Curse took his sister last spring. Richmond, clapboard cluster, cotton fields. Whispers fever spread. Richmond wed women birthed, twisted, slithering, night preacher waterless. Elias, stubborn rancher, broad-shouldered, quick-tempered, dragged to hills, convinced answers in war-abandoned mineshafts. Ain't devil, growled campfire first. Something killable. Now tunnel narrowed, ducking jagged, snagging coat. Air thickened, metallic throat cling. Swung pickaxe wall experimental. Clang echoing long, dislodging limestone chunk. Wet thud fall, not rock. Iridescent vein, pulsing heartbeat under skin faint. Elias, steadier than felt, ain't natural ore. Veins. Pushed past. Lantern wild. Illuminating cluster stone threading. Thin, translucent, blue-veined, root-branching, buried tree. One hollow-ended, quivering, gelatinous sack. Jabbed knife. Burst viscous spill ground smoking. Hiss tunnel filled. Darkness ahead rumble. Stones grave shifting. Froze. Mind ledger sheriff attic yellowed 54 now births. Mary scales stillborn. Eliza coyote cry vanish. Hasty crosses each. Folklore scare thought. Elias eyes certainty burned. Pa saw, whiskey saloon told. Held boy girl? Slipped arms, unhealing scratches, rumble boot vibrating. Yanked Elias as wall buckled. Dust billowed. Haze slithered shape. Elongated, many-limbed, obsidian eyes light-catching. Not human animal. Mockery, gray slick mottled, purpose-chilling cave deep. Run! Shouted. Elias lunged, knife flashing, recoiled hissing. Truth-etched form. Calico remnants hide-woven birthing gown threads. Bolted back, pursuit claw scrape relentless. Elias panted. Seal! Hill down! Lungs burned bend rounding. Shells crunching foot. Grabbed loose timber support, wedged wall swung pickaxe all. Splintered wood, groaned rock. Tunnel breath held, gave way. Collapse roared. Earth cascading thingberry. Stumbled night air gasping under stars, hillside settling. Breath caught, Elias pocket shard, nest shell fragment. Tiny deliberate scratches letter-like. Richmond, red hollow voiced. Callin' home. Gut weight settled. Stirred unfinished. Curse not hill in blood, next wife waiting quicken. The lantern's flame flickered as I slammed the barn door shut. Boots kicking, dust clinging, sweat legs. Elias right behind, breath ragged, burlap sack clutched devil secrets. Can't run blind, Caleb, gasped, splinter beam leaning. Sack thing stirring again. Didn't answer quick. Hands shook, fresh match lighting. Sulfur stale air sharp. Sack twitched, low hiss, coarse weave escaping cracked earth wind. Tug midnight old Richmond plot. Low watchful moon. Paw stories, curse whispers. Richmond wives, shadows not sons, but this. Bone claw, warm writhing. Stove light. Muttered, rusted corner nodding. Elias hesitated, eyes loft, shadows ink spilled. Cautious since boy Comanche dodging, tonight chains felt. Grabbed wall shovel, handle soil turning, piece yielding worn. Hiss louder, sack bulging unnatural. Memories clawed. Ma 59 screams. Midwife fleeing, apron blood. Forked tails, coal eyes whispering. Pa quick buried. Grave unfilled. Elias first signs last week. Cemetery shallow pits, each birthing gown cloth scrap. Came abandoned ranch 10 Austin miles, isolation answers thinking. Unearthed abomination. Prodded sack shovel edge. Recoiled. Lashed. Fabric slit, maw needle teeth, glinting lantern. God almighty. Elias whispered, damper fumbling. Flames roared life behind. Shadows long twisted hay floor. Listen, forced steady. Mind pieced fragments, great-grandpa letters, preacher traded blessings, packed souring. 57 drought cattle starving, river twisting. Wives vanishing, bellies lie swelling. Creature not curse-born. Hungry bloodline hound fresh kill. War brewing. Confederate recruiters able-bodied sniffing, couldn't loose. Elias coal shovelful dumped, heat fierce blooming. Burn like others? Heavy hung. 2 smaller offspring torched, dream screeches. Remnants those, not pulsing core. Knotted, doubt gnawing. Trembling fingers, sack knots untying. Glimpsed oil water iridescent scales, wrong folding limbs. Lunged, claws wrist air inches raking. Swung shovel. Thud sickening, ichor spraying dirt. Coiled back, whale rafter rattling. Human cry, beast rage part. Elias forward rushed, wall pitchfork grabbing. Dragged stove ward, thrashing burlap weakening, tearing free. Firelight worse, child torso hybrid elongated face mockery, green eyes my staring leathery folds. Pa's eyes. Richmond eyes. Sweat, vision stinging, heaved flames. Screamed, licking, blackening scales char. Stench rotten meat hit. Held fast, pitchfork pinning, thrash stop. Silence fell. Stove crackle, broken heaving breaths. Elias wall slumped, soot wiping face. 3 down. Letters said 14 wives. 14 like. Stared fire, embers flesh twist consuming. War drums distant chest, Virginia kin letters enlistment urging. Union shadow south creeping. Spread curse, abomination birthing Richmond wombs, not just bloodline doom. Frontier unravel, whole damned. River dawn, final said shovel sheathing. Source find. Root burn before us rooting. Elias gaze met grim nod. Turned away. Neck chill prickled. Barn door latched entry tight, now creaking hinges open swinging. Night wind faint mocking hiss carrying. The lantern's flame flickered like a dying heartbeat as I crouched behind the splintered barn wall. Breath ragged against chill night air. Elias gripped rifle tighter. Knuckles bone white. Eyes darting shadows where things slithered moments before. Twisted silhouette. Part limb, part coil. Vanishing underbrush like smoke from a fresh blaze. Age grave. We'd tracked it here from the Richmond homestead. The air thick with the metallic tang of blood and something fouler. Like rot blooming in the womb of the earth. It's close, Caleb. Elias whispered, his voice a gravel scrape.
Closer than last time.
You hear that rustle? That's no coyote. I nodded, sweat beading on my forehead despite the autumn bite, my hand steady on the Bowie knife at my belt. We'd been brothers in this madness since Pa's confession 3 nights back, spilling the family secret over whiskey that burned like confession itself. The curse that struck every Richmond wife since 32, birthing abominations that clawed their way into the world, hungry and wrong. Ma had been the first to whisper of it before she bled out, her eyes wide with the horror of what she'd carried. Now it was Sarah, Elias's wife, swollen and screaming in the cabin 2 miles off, her pains starting at dusk. If we didn't end this spawn before it fully formed, it'd claim her like the others, leaving nothing but echoes and empty cradles. The rustle grew bolder, branches snapping under an impossible weight. Elias raised the rifle, barrel glinting moon pale, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, listen. A low keen cut the silence, not animal, not human, something gurgling from a throat that shouldn't exist, laced with the wet suck of flesh parting. My stomach twisted. I'd seen the remnants once as a boy, hidden in the root cellar. Elongated fingers tipped with barbs, skin like oil-slick leather, eyes that glowed with stolen fire. They didn't die easy, these things. Bullets tore them, but they reformed, hungry for the life that birthed them. We edged forward, boots silent on the dew-slick grass. The barn's sagging roof looming like a broken promise. The creature burst from the thicket then, a nightmare uncoiling. 8 feet of sinew and shadow, its torso humanoid but warped, arms ending in scythe-like claws that raked the air. Sarah's screams echoed in my mind, distant but sharpening. As if the thing fed on her agony already, Elias fired first, the crack shattering the night, splintering bark where the beast had been a heartbeat before. It lunged faster than sin, slamming into him and sending the rifle flying. I dove, knife flashing, burying the blade in its flank. Black ichor sprayed, hot and reeking of sulfur, but it barely flinched, turning on me with jaws unhinging to reveal rows of needle teeth. Pain exploded in my shoulder as a claw grazed flesh, tearing shirt and skin in one swipe. I rolled, tasting dirt and blood, and scrambled for the fallen rifle. Elias was up, grappling the thing's midsection, his wiry frame straining against its thrash. "Caleb, the eyes, blind it!" he roared, face contorted in that stubborn grit we'd inherited from Pa, the kind that turned farmers into fighters when the world went biblical. I snatched the gun, aimed true, and squeezed. The shot took it square in the socket, the eye bursting like overripe fruit, spilling luminous fluid that sizzled on the ground. The creature howled, a sound that clawed at my sanity, rearing back and flinging Elias aside like a rag doll. He hit the wall with a thud, groaning. But I was already moving, jamming the barrel into its maw and firing again. Muzzle flash lit the horror in stark relief. Vestiges of humanity in its face, a mockery of the child it might have been, twisted by whatever devilry haunted our bloodline. It collapsed, twitching, limbs folding inward as if retreating to some unholy core. But it wasn't dead, not yet. These bastards lingered, drawing strength from the curse's root. I knelt beside Elias, helping him up, his arm dangling limp. "Sarah," he gasped, eyes wild. "We gotta get back. If it regenerates." The cabin lights flickered in the distance, a beacon pulling us through the dark. But as we staggered toward it, a new sound rose. A chorus of similar keens from the woods, faint but multiplying. The curse wasn't one spawn. It was a plague, birthed across generations, waiting for the right moon to rise. We'd killed a scout, maybe, but the pack was coming, and Sarah's labor was far from over. The lantern's flame guttered in the draft, seeping through the cabin's warped boards, casting jagged shadows that danced like the things we'd buried under the old oak. I gripped the shotgun tighter, its barrel still warm from the shot that had silenced Elias's screams an hour back. My brother had been the last of us to fall to it, the curse twisting him from the inside out, his skin splitting like overripe fruit to reveal whatever hellspawn the Richmond bloodline spawned. But now, with Sarah's belly swollen and the moon hanging full outside, I knew my turn at watching over her wasn't done. "Jed," she whispered from the pallet, her voice a threadbare rasp. "It's moving again. Feels like it's clawing to get free." I knelt beside her, pressing a calloused hand to the taut drum of her abdomen. The kick came hard. Not the flutter of a child, but a deliberate shove, as if something with talons tested the walls of its prison. Sweat beaded on her forehead, pale as the linen sheet clutched in her fists. We'd ridden out from the family homestead 3 days ago, fleeing the whispers in Austin that the Richmond curse had claimed another generation. Every wife birthing abominations that slithered into the night, leaving men broken and townsfolk with pitchforks. But running hadn't stopped the stirring. If anything, the trail's isolation amplified it. The wind through the scrub oaks carrying echoes of the cries we'd left behind. "Easy now," I murmured, though my own gut churned with the lie. The plan had been simple when we lit out. Head for the borderlands where Confederate patrols were thin, find a midwife in some forgotten Mexican village who wouldn't ask questions about a woman heavy with whatever. But the river ford had washed out our supplies 2 nights prior, and Sarah's pains had started early, forcing us into this derelict line shack on the edge of Comanche territory. No midwife, no allies, just me, the gun, and the silver crucifix Father had pressed into my palm before the madness took him, swearing it held some old Richmond ward against the devil's seed. She arched suddenly, a gasp tearing from her throat as another ripple coursed under my hand. I yanked back, heart pounding like a war drum. Through the thin fabric of her dress I saw it, a protrusion sharp and fleeting like a limb not meant for this world pressing outward. "God help us," I breathed, fumbling for the flask of holy water we'd scavenged from the mission ruins, dashing it across her belly. It sizzled faintly, steam rising in the lamplight, but the movement only grew frantic. Sarah's eyes locked on mine, wide with the terror we'd both denied since her quickening. "Jed, promise me, if it's like the others, don't let it take me alive." I nodded, throat tight, loading the shotgun with the last of the blessed rounds we'd carved sigils into. Outside, coyotes yipped in the distance, but closer now. A low rumble built, like thunder without clouds. or the growl of something stalking the perimeter. The curse wasn't just in her. It was in the land itself. The Richmond taint seeping from our cursed soil since grandfather's pact with whatever demon he'd bargained for fortune in 32. We'd burned the family Bible to ash, scattered the remains in the Rio Grande, thinking it might break the cycle. Fool's hope. The thing inside her thrashed harder, and Sarah cried out, the sound pulling me to my feet as I swung the door open to the night. The moon bathed the clearing in silver, turning the mesquite thorns to needles. There at the tree line, shapes shifted. Not animals, but the remnants of what we'd fled. Twisted forms, half human, half beast, drawn by the birth scent like wolves to blood. Elias's spawn, maybe, or kin from the graves we'd desecrated. One lunged forward, its elongated limbs skittering on too many joints, eyes glowing with infernal hunger. I fired, the blast shattering the quiet, feathers of smoke curling as it crumpled. But more emerged, a half dozen at least, circling the cabin with unnatural silence. Backing inside, I barred the door with the oak beam, my mind racing. Sarah's labored breaths filled the room, punctuated by wet, tearing sounds from within. The crucifix burned hot in my pocket, a reminder of the old tales, how the first Richmond wife had birthed the curse after consorting with a skinwalker during the cholera years. We'd need more than bullets. The priest in San Antonio had whispered of a ritual, blood of the father mingled with sage and iron to bind the offspring. But we had no sage, and the iron from the stove would have to do. As the door shuddered under the first impacts, claws raking wood like nails on a coffin, I grabbed the knife from my belt, slicing deep into my palm without flinching. Blood welled, hot and coppery, and I pressed it to Sarah's lips. Drink, love. Fight it with me. She swallowed, choking, her body convulsing as the entity inside sensed the challenge. The assaults outside intensified, the cabin groaning, but in that moment, with her hand in mine and the silver cross clutched between us, I felt the grit of our bloodline shift, not toward surrender but defiance. The curse might claim its due, but tonight we'd make it earn every inch. The lantern's flame flickered as I crouched behind the splintered barn wall, the acrid scent of gunpowder still hanging in the air from the shot I'd fired earlier. Elias had gone still, his body slumped against the post where the chain held him. But his eyes, those unnatural, glowing slits, locked onto mine with a hunger that chilled deeper than the Texas night. I gripped the rifle tighter, my knuckles white, whispering to myself that this wasn't my brother anymore. Not since the curse had twisted him into whatever abomination now stirred. Jeremiah, you can't hesitate, I muttered under my breath, the words tasting like ash. The plan had been simple: lure him out with the old family whistle, the one Pa used for calling us in from the fields. It worked too well. Elias, no, the thing wearing his skin, had lumbered from the shadows of the Richmond homestead, drawn by the familiar trill, but now it strained against the iron links I'd forged from the blacksmith scraps, each link etched with prayers I'd half remembered from Ma's Bible. A low growl rumbled from its throat, not quite human, not quite beast, as it tugged harder. The chain groaned, fibers of rusted metal protesting. I raised the rifle, sighting down the barrel, but my finger hovered over the trigger. What if there was still a piece of him left? The midwife's tales echoed in my mind. Every wife in Richmond birthing horrors since 59, scaly limbs and eyes like coals, all sired by men who'd drunk from that damned spring. Elias had been the last, born twisted but hidden until the war fever brought him home changed. The creature lunged, the chain snapping taut with a crack that split the night. Wood shavings flew as its claws raked the post inches from my boot. I fired. The shot boomed, echoing across the empty fields, and the bullet tore into its shoulder. Black ichor sprayed, not blood, sizzling where it hit the dirt. It howled, a sound that twisted my guts, and recoiled, but only for a moment. Already the wound knit, flesh bubbling like tar over a fire. I scrambled back, thorns snagging my trousers as I bolted toward the tree line. Footsteps, heavy, uneven, pounded behind me, the chain dragging like a serpent's tail. "Elias, fight it!" I yelled over my shoulder, hating the desperation in my voice. No answer, just that guttural snarl growing closer. The moon hung low, casting jagged shadows from the cottonwoods, and I dove into the underbrush, heart hammering as I reloaded on the fly. Panting, I pressed against a trunk, the bark rough under my palms. The thing paused at the edge of the woods, sniffing the air, its silhouette hulking against the silver light. I could see the remnants of the chain dangling from its wrist, useless now. This was it. The backfire of trusting old iron and older superstitions. Doc Harlan had warned me. The curse didn't yield to lead or prayer. It hungered for kin. And here I was, the last Richmond blood, bait in my own trap. A twig snapped nearby, not from the creature, but to my left. I froze. Was it circling? Or worse, had the birthing spread? Rumors from Austin spoke of packs now, shadows slinking through the hills. I eased the hammer back, peering through the leaves. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the branches, carrying a faint metallic tang, like blood, or the spring itself. Then it charged, bursting through the saplings like they were straw. I swung the rifle up and squeezed, the report deafening in the close quarters. This time the shot caught it square in the chest, staggering it back. It dropped to a knee, clutching the wound, and for a split second its eyes flickered. Brown, human, Elias's eyes pleading. "Brother?" I whispered, lowering the barrel just a fraction. The moment shattered. It sprang forward faster than before, claws slashing. I sidestepped, the rifle butt cracking against its jaw with a sickening thud. We grappled, rolling into the mud, its weight pinning me as fetid breath washed over my face. My hands scrabbled for purchase, finding a loose rock, and I smashed it down again and again until the glow in its eyes dimmed. When it finally went limp, I shoved it off, gasping for air, ribs aching from the crush. Dawn was creeping over the horizon, painting the sky in reluctant pinks. I staggered to my feet, staring at the broken form. Elias, or what was left, lay twisted in the dirt, the ichor pooling around him like spilled ink. No victory stirred in me, just a hollow ache. The curse claimed another, and now the homestead stood empty. The spring untouched, but whispering promises to any fool who listened. But as I turned toward home, a rustle from the brush halted me. Not alone. Footsteps multiple approached from the east, where the trail from town wound through the scrub. Riders by the jingle of spurs. The rangers? Or something worse, drawn by the shots? I melted into the shadows, rifle ready, knowing the night's work was far from done. The lantern's flame guttered in the damp cave air, casting shadows that twisted like the things we'd buried back in Richmond. I gripped the shotgun tighter, my knuckles white against the worn walnut stock as Elias whispered from the darkness ahead. "It's close, Jeremiah. I can feel it in my bones, the same pull that took my Sarah." We'd come this far chasing whispers from the old Comanche trails, tales of a rift in the earth where the devil's seed first took root. Elias, ever the stubborn preacher with his Bible tucked in his coat like a talisman, led the way, his limp from the war wound slowing us but never stopping him. Me? I was just the blacksmith who'd lost his own wife to the curse, her screams echoing in my dreams as something with too many eyes clawed its way out. Brave? Hell, I was terrified, but grief has a way of sharpening a man's resolve into something like courage. The tunnel narrowed, forcing us to crouch, the rock scraping my shoulders raw. Ahead a faint glow pulsed, not firelight but something sickly green, like the underbelly of a frog in moonlight. Elias halted, his hand shooting up. "Listen," he hissed. My heart hammered, drowning out the drip of water until I heard it. A low, wet chittering like rats fighting over scraps, but deeper, hungrier. I swallowed hard, tasting the iron tang of fear. This is madness, I thought. We should have burned the town and run west. But Elias's eyes burned with that righteous fire, the kind that had sent men to war and kept them marching through cannon fire. "The Lord tests us," he'd say. But I wondered if God had anything to do with this abomination. We crept forward, boots silent on the slick stone. The glow brightened, revealing a chamber where the walls wept a viscous slime that glowed faintly. In the center, huddled in a nest of twisted roots and bone, it waited. A brood of them, smaller than the ones that had ravaged Richmond, but no less vile. Their skins shimmered iridescent, eyes like polished obsidian scattered across limbs that bent wrong. One lifted its head, sniffing the air, and let out a keening wail that froze my blood. Elias raised his cross-etched knife, the one he'd forged from a Confederate bayonet. "In nomine Patris," he began, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I pumped the shotgun, the click echoing like judgment. But as the first one lunged, skittering across the floor with unnatural speed, I realized our plan. Flush them out with fire and smoke. Hadn't accounted for this. The air thickened, heavy with their musk, and the tunnel behind us rumbled as if the earth itself was closing in. I fired first, the blast shattering the quiet buckshot tearing into the nearest creature. It screeched, black ichor sprang. But two more swarmed from the shadows, claws raking Elias's leg. He swung the knife, carving a gash that sizzled on contact, but they didn't stop. Jeremiah. The powder. He yelled, blood soaking his trouser leg. I fumbled for the satchel of black powder we'd mixed with holy water. Elias's mad idea, born of desperation. If bullets won't end it, maybe the devil's own fire will, he'd insisted. But as I lit the fuse, a larger shape uncoiled from the nest, its form shifting, almost human in the flicker, with my Eliza's dark hair matted across its brow. My hand shook, the match dropping ash. Not her. Can't be. The explosion rocked the chamber, flames licking the walls, consuming the smaller ones in a roar of heat and screams. Elias dragged himself back, coughing, as I hauled him toward the tunnel. But the big one pursued, its eyes locking on mine, not with hunger but recognition. It whispered, a voice like wind through graves. Husband. We burst into the night air, collapsing on the scrubland under a sky bruised with stars. The cave mouth belched smoke, sealing with a groan, but I knew it wasn't over. Elias clutched his Bible, pages singed, his face pale. We heard it, brother. But the curse, it's in us now. I nodded, the weight of Eliza's ghost pressing down, wondering if the child I'd never held was waiting in the dark, calling me home. The war raged on in the distance, but our fight had just begun, with scars that no surgeon could mend. The lantern's flame sputtered in my grip, casting jagged shadows across the cellar walls as I descended the final creaking step. Elias was right behind me, his breath hot and ragged against my neck, the shotgun slung over his shoulder like a promise we both knew might not be enough. We'd come this far chasing whispers of the Richmond curse's heart, a twisted root buried under the old Richmond place, fed by the blood of those unholy births. But the air down here thickened with something alive, something that pulsed like a vein under the dirt floor. Keep your eyes sharp, Caleb, Elias muttered, his voice a low rumble that barely cut the damp silence. He was the cautious one, always had been since we were boys dodging Comanche raids on the frontier, but tonight his caution felt like fear wrapped in grit. I nodded, though he couldn't see it in the gloom, and swung the lantern higher. The beam caught on shelves sagging with forgotten jars, pickles gone to mush, preserves clouded with mold. But it was the far wall that stopped us cold. Not a wall at all, but a mass of roots twisting out from the earth, pale and veined like skin, writhing faintly as if tasting the light. I froze, my free hand instinctively dropping to the knife at my belt. The things the women had birthed, those scuttling abominations with too many limbs and eyes like polished obsidian, hadn't come from nowhere. Folks in town whispered of a pact gone wrong back in '55, when Richmond's founder struck a deal with something old and hungry to save the cattle from drought. But the cost was the babes twisted from the womb. We'd lost Sarah to one last spring, her screams echoing through our cabin as it clawed free, leaving her pale and broken. Elias's wife, too, and half the settlement. No more. Not if we could cut this curse at its source. Look there, I said, pointing with the lantern. At the base of the root mass, a hollow pulsed open, exhaling a sour wind that carried the faint cry of an infant. Muffled. Wrong. Elias raised the shotgun, his knuckles white. We burn it, like we planned. But as he stepped forward, the roots stirred, coiling like snakes roused from sleep. One lashed out, wrapping my ankle with a grip cold as grave soil. I yanked back, the knife flashing in my hand, but it held fast, pulling me toward the hollow. Pain shot up my leg as thorns pierced boot and flesh, but I twisted, slashing deep. Sap like black blood sprayed, and the root recoiled with a hiss that sounded almost human. Elias fired, boom echoing like thunder in the confined space, and chunks of the mass splintered, filling the air with acrid smoke. Get up, damn it, he yelled, grabbing my arm and hauling me free. We stumbled back, chests heaving as the hollow widened, revealing glimpses of eyes within. Dozens, unblinking, watching us with Sarah's green irises. It knew us, called to us in that cry, pulling at the grief we'd buried under resolve. My mind raced, fire, yes, but the lantern oil wouldn't touch this deep. We'd need the kerosene from the wagon outside, but that meant leaving, risking it following. Elias, the entrance. Bar it if it moves. He nodded, reloading with hands that shook only slightly, his bravery shining through like always. I edged closer, ignoring the burn in my leg, and drove the knife into the nearest root, carving a path toward the heart we hoped beat there. The mass shuddered, more roots erupting from the floor, seeking us out. One snagged Elias's coat, yanking him off balance. He cursed, blasting it point blank, but the shot only slowed it. I lunged, severing the tendril, and we fell together against the shelves, jars shattering around us in a rain of glass and brine. The cry grew louder, a chorus now, mocking our fight. Blood from my ankle soaked my sock, each step a fire, but I thought of Sarah's last words. "End it, Caleb," and pushed on. We'd failed before, back at the crossroads when the first abomination rose from the fields, scattering our posse with its speed. That night cost us Tom, torn apart under the moon. But here, in this pit, with Elias's steady presence at my side, I felt the shift. Human will against the unnatural. Grit turning the tide. "Together," I grunted, and he met my eyes, that old camaraderie sparking. We advanced, knife and gun in tandem, carving and blasting a bloody furrow toward the core. As we breached the outer layers, the air hummed with power, the hollow's maw gaping wide enough to swallow a man. Something stirred inside, larger than the spawn we'd faced, its form half shadow, half flesh. My heart pounded, but I didn't falter. This was for Richmond, for the wives we'd lost, for the lives we might yet save. Elias lit the rag in the lantern's spout, ready to hurl it, but the thing lunged, claws like roots extended, and I met it head on, knife plunging true. The lantern's flame guttered low in my hand, casting jagged shadows across the cellar walls as I crept toward the rusted grate. Sweat stung my eyes, but I didn't dare wipe it away. Not with Elias's ragged breaths echoing behind me, each one a reminder that time was bleeding out faster than the blood from his side. "Keep it together, Tom," he whispered, his voice like gravel under boots. "That thing's close. I can smell it." I nodded, though he couldn't see it in the dark. The air down here reeked of damp earth and something fouler, like milk gone rotten mixed with iron. We'd come this far chasing whispers of the curse's heart, buried under the old Richmond homestead where it all began. Every wife in the county, twisted by that devil's bargain their men made back in '59, trading souls for gold in the war chest. My own Sarah. God, the memory clawed at me, her screams turning to gurgles as what slithered out wasn't our boy but a thing with too many eyes and limbs that writhed like smoke. The grate loomed ahead, its bars warped as if something had strained against them from below. I wedged the lantern on a ledge and gripped the iron bar with both hands, muscles burning from the climb down the collapsed well shaft. Elias leaned against the wall, clutching the shotgun we'd scavenged from the sheriff's ruins, its barrel still warm from the last abomination we'd put down upstairs. "You think this is it?" he rasped. "The source?" "Has to be," I muttered, yanking harder. The grate gave with a screech that set my teeth on edge, revealing a tunnel snaking into blackness. Cool air rushed up, carrying that sickly sweet rot. My mind raced. If the old tales held true, this was where the pact was sealed in blood and whispers from the Comanche lands. We'd lost too much already. My brother gutted in the fields, Elias's arm mangled by one of those spawn. But if we burned it out, maybe the curse would unravel. Maybe the women still breathing could bear true children again. Not these mockeries that hungered for their own kin. Elias pushed off the wall, staggering forward. "I'll cover you." His eyes fever-bright locked on mine. We'd been boys together, herding cattle under these same stars before the war and the curse turned everything to ash. No speeches now, just the weight of what we'd do or die trying. I dropped into the tunnel first, boots splashing in shallow muck. The walls pressed close, slick with moisture that felt almost alive, pulsing faintly under my fingers. Behind me, Elias followed, the shotgun scraping stone. We moved slow, hearts pounding in unison, every shadow twisting into claws in my head. What if it was waiting? What if severing the root just made it spread? Like fire through dry grass. A low rumble vibrated the earth and the tunnel narrowed ahead, forcing us to our bellies. I clawed forward, dirt caking my beard, whispering prayers I half believed. Elias grunted as he dragged himself, the wound reopening with a wet tear. "Tom, if I don't make it, you will," I snapped, sharper than I meant. No room for doubt, not here. The rumble grew, shaking pebbles loose, and then light, faint, unnatural green, flickered from a chamber ahead. We froze. Shapes moved in it, not human, not animal. Elongated forms slithering over roots that twisted like veins. The heart of it all pulsing with that cursed life. My hand found the dynamite bundle in my satchel, the fuses we'd soaked in lamp oil for a quicker burn. One chance. One spark. Elias raised the shotgun, his face pale but set. "Light it up, partner." For Sarah. For all of them. I struck the match, the flame dancing wild in the quaking dark. The sun hung low over the parched earth, casting long shadows across the Richmond ranch like fingers accusing the sky. I gripped the shotgun tighter, its barrel still warm from the last blast that had torn through the thing in the barn. My wife's final abomination. A writhing mass of scales and whispers that had clawed its way from her belly hours ago. Eliza lay still now, her face pale and peaceful in the dim light of the lantern. But peace was a lie we'd all chased too long. The curse had taken her, just like it had the others before. Ma, Aunt Lydia, every Richmond wife who dared love one of us men under this blood-soaked Texas soil. I stepped out onto the porch, the wood creaking under my boots, and scanned the horizon. The air smelled of dust and sulfur, the kind that lingered after lightning strikes the ground too hard. Pa had always said the curse started with Grandpa Elias, back when he struck that unholy bargain with the Comanche shaman during the war, trading his soul for land that never dried up. But the land thrived and the women suffered. Each birth brought forth not a child but a demon's jest. Twisted limbs, eyes like polished obsidian, voices that mimicked the dead. We'd buried them all in unmarked graves, whispering prayers that did nothing but echo back our guilt. Now, with the war raging distant thunder in the east, it was just me and Caleb, my younger brother, hunkered down by the well. He clutched the family Bible, its pages frayed from nights spent reading aloud, hoping words could bind what blood had loosed. "We end this tonight, Jed," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Caleb was the cautious one, always planning, always quoting scripture to make sense of the madness. I'd been the brute, charging in with iron and fire, but brute force hadn't saved Eliza. The ground trembled first, a low rumble that set the horses whinnying in the corral. Then it came, the earth splitting like an overripe fruit, birthing the heart of the curse. Not one creature, but a horde, slithering up from the depths, their forms shifting between man and beast, scales glistening under the dying sun. They moved with purpose, drawn by Eliza's death, converging on the ranch like judgment itself. I fired first, the shotgun's roar splitting the dusk, buckshot peppering the lead abomination. It shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and lunged, claws raking the air inches from my chest. Caleb shouted, "The well!" The water's the key. Elias sealed it there. We'd pieced it together over whiskey-fueled nights. The bargain's anchor wasn't the land, but the spring beneath, poisoned by the shaman's rite. Ingenuity, Pa would have called it. Human stubbornness refusing to yield. Together we backed toward the well, me blasting gaps in their ranks, Caleb hurling lantern oil that ignited in bursts of flame. One beast latched onto my leg, its teeth sinking deep, venom burning like fire through my veins. I bashed its skull with the gunstock, feeling bone give way, but the pain slowed me. Caleb hauled me up, his wiry frame straining. "Pour the salt," the Bible says. I didn't wait for the verse. Fumbling in my pocket, I upended the pouch of coarse sea salt we'd scavenged from the wagon trains. Pure, untainted, the one thing these things couldn't abide. It poured into the well's mouth, mixing with the brackish water below. The horde howled, recoiling as if the earth itself rebelled. The ground bucked, fissures racing outward, swallowing the creatures back into the abyss. One last beast, larger than the rest, reared up, its eyes locking on mine, Elias's eyes twisted and pleading. With a final desperate shove, Caleb and I heaved a boulder into the well, sealing it shut. The rumbling ceased. Silence fell. Broken only by our ragged breaths and the distant call of a coyote, we sat there as night deepened, bandaging wounds by firelight. The curse was broken, or so we hoped. The spring choked, the bargain drowned in salt and stone. But Eliza was gone, and the ranch felt hollow, its fields whispering of losses that no triumph could mend. Caleb closed the Bible, his face etched with the weight of survival. "We rebuild, Jed, for them." I nodded, staring at the stars. The war would come for us soon enough, but for tonight, we'd earned this fragile dawn. Humans, gritty and unbowed, against the dark that birthed monsters from our own blood.